India, a rising power in the Asian century, finds itself in a geographically precarious position. Bordered by two nuclear-armed neighbors, Pakistan and China, with whom it has a history of conflict, India faces the constant challenge of safeguarding its sovereignty. The possibility of a two-front war, where India would have to engage both Pakistan and China simultaneously, has long been a strategic nightmare for Indian defense planners. This concern is further exacerbated by the unresolved border disputes and growing military capabilities of both adversaries. The Cold Start Doctrine, as the name suggests, envisions a swift and decisive military response to any transgression by its adversaries. Unlike previous doctrines that relied on prolonged mobilization and large-scale operations, Cold Start emphasizes speed, agility, and the element of surprise. This shift reflects India's recognition of the need for a more proactive and offensive defense strategy. To understand the genesis of India's Cold Start Doctrine, one must rewind to the shadows of the 1962 Sino-Indian War. This conflict, a stark lesson in military unpreparedness for India, exposed the limitations of its then-existing defense strategy. The war, fought in the high Himalayas, highlighted the logistical challenges and strategic vulnerabilities of a reactive defense posture against a well-prepared and determined adversary. While the seeds of Cold Start were sown in the aftermath of the 1962 war, it was the 1999 Kargil conflict that provided the impetus for its crystallization. The Kargil conflict, sparked by Pakistan's infiltration of Indian-controlled territory, exposed the limitations of India's then prevailing defensive posture, which relied on slow mobilization and large-scale operations. India's response in Kargil, though ultimately successful, was hampered by delays in mobilization and the challenges of fighting a limited war in mountainous terrain. The conflict exposed the vulnerabilities of a reactive defense strategy and highlighted the need for a more proactive and agile approach. Section 3. Evolution of Cold Start from Concept to Capability. The Cold Start Doctrine, as it began to take shape in the early 2000s, was not a singular, monolithic plan, but rather a set of evolving military concepts and capabilities designed to give India the ability to launch a swift and decisive military response to Pakistani aggression. Central to the Cold Start Doctrine is the creation of integrated battle groups, self-contained, highly mobile formations designed to penetrate enemy territory quickly and strike critical targets before Pakistan can effectively respond or escalate the conflict. Section 1. Speed and surprise, the essence of Cold Start. At its core, the Cold Start Doctrine revolves around the principles of speed and surprise. Unlike India's previous defensive posture, which relied on large-scale mobilization and protracted wars of attrition, Cold Start aims to seize the initiative from the outset. The doctrine recognizes that in the modern battlefield, characterized by rapid technological advancements and the potential for swift escalation, time is of the essence. Cold Start seeks to exploit the element of surprise by rapidly deploying and engaging enemy forces before they have the opportunity to fully mobilize and respond effectively. Section 2. Strategic objectives, deterring aggression, shaping the battlefield. The Cold Start Doctrine is not merely about launching swift military strikes, it is deeply intertwined with India's broader strategic objectives. The doctrine aims to achieve these objectives by deterring aggression from its adversaries, shaping the battlefield in India's favor, and ultimately safeguarding its territorial integrity. Deterrence lies at the heart of Cold Start. By demonstrating its capability and resolve to launch swift and punitive strikes, India seeks to raise the costs of aggression for its adversaries, making them think twice before initiating hostilities. Section 3. Tactical Blueprint, Integrated Battle Groups, IBGs, and Network-Centric Warfare. To translate the strategic objectives of Cold Start into tangible military capabilities, India has undertaken significant restructuring and modernization of its armed forces. Central to this transformation is the concept of integrated battle groups, IBGs, self-contained, highly mobile combat formations designed for rapid deployment and offensive operations. IBGs represent a departure from India's traditional divisional structure, which was deemed too cumbersome and slow for the kind of swift and agile operations envisioned under Cold Start. These battle groups are tailored for specific operational objectives and geographical terrains and comprise a mix of armored, infantry, artillery, and air defense units supported by integrated logistics and communication elements. Section 1. The Two-Front Challenge, a strategic balancing act. For India, the prospect of a two-front war presents a daunting strategic challenge. It compels Indian defense planners to consider the possibility of simultaneous conflicts with both Pakistan and China, each possessing formidable military capabilities and harboring long-standing territorial disputes with India. This necessitates a delicate balancing act, requiring India to distribute its forces and resources judiciously while preparing for a range of contingencies. The geographical realities further complicate India's strategic predicament. The Himalayan mountain range, forming a natural barrier along India's northern border with China, limits the avenues for large-scale military operations. This geographical constraint, however, does not negate the threat of a Chinese offensive, but rather shapes the nature of potential conflict, emphasizing high-altitude warfare and the importance of securing key mountain passes. Section 2. Pakistan, the primary target of Cold Start. While India faces potential threats from both Pakistan and China, the Cold Start Doctrine is primarily geared towards deterring and, if necessary, punishing Pakistani aggression. This focus stems from the historical context of India-Pakistan relations, marked by numerous wars and persistent mistrust. The Cold Start Doctrine is designed to exploit Pakistan's vulnerabilities, particularly its relatively smaller size and limited strategic depth. By launching swift and decisive offensive strikes into Pakistani territory, India aims to achieve its military objectives before Pakistan can effectively mobilize its forces or escalate the conflict to a nuclear level. Section 3. China, the looming threat in the north. While the Cold Start Doctrine is primarily focused on Pakistan, the specter of a two-front war necessitates that India also account for the potential threat from China. The 1962 war remains etched in India's strategic psyche, serving as a constant reminder of China's military capabilities and its willingness to use force to assert its territorial claims. China's rapid military modernization in recent decades, coupled with its assertive posture in the Indo-Pacific region, has further amplified concerns in New Delhi. China's growing economic and military might, combined with its strategic partnership with Pakistan, poses a significant challenge to India's security. Section 4. The complex interplay Pakistan-China and the risk of escalation. The possibility of a two-front war involving both Pakistan and China presents the most challenging scenario for India. It raises the specter of coordinated military actions by both adversaries, potentially stretching India's resources thin and limiting its options. While a full-fledged, coordinated two-front war remains a worst-case scenario, the possibility of Pakistan and China coordinating their actions in a more limited conflict cannot be discounted. For instance, Pakistan could initiate a border skirmish or increase its support for militant groups operating in Indian-administered Kashmir, aiming to tie down Indian forces and create a diversion while China increases its military pressure along the line of actual control. Section 1. Assessing Cold Start, Strengths and Potential Effectiveness. The Cold Start Doctrine, with its emphasis on speed, surprise and offensive maneuvers, offers India several potential advantages in a conflict scenario, particularly against Pakistan. The doctrine's core strength lies in its ability to exploit Pakistan's vulnerabilities, namely its relatively smaller size, limited strategic depth, and fear of suffering a quick, decisive defeat. By rapidly mobilizing and deploying integrated battle groups, India could potentially seize the initiative, dictate the terms of engagement, and inflict significant damage before Pakistan can effectively respond or escalate the conflict to a nuclear level. This rapid offensive capability, coupled with India's growing air and naval superiority, could allow India to achieve its military objectives swiftly and decisively. Section 2, Limitations and Vulnerabilities, chinks in the armor. While the Cold Start Doctrine offers potential advantages, it is not without its limitations and vulnerabilities. Critics argue that the doctrine's success relies on a number of assumptions that may not hold true in a real-world conflict scenario. One key concern is the element of surprise. Pakistan, well aware of the Cold Start Doctrine, has had ample time to prepare its defences and develop countermeasures. The element of surprise, crucial for the doctrine's success, might be difficult to achieve, especially given the close proximity of Indian and Pakistani forces along the border. Looming large over any potential India-Pakistan conflict is the spectre of nuclear weapons. Both countries possess nuclear arsenals and maintain a doctrine of no first use, pledging only to use nuclear weapons in retaliation to a nuclear attack. However, the possibility of escalation to the nuclear level, particularly in a conflict where one side faces a decisive conventional defeat, cannot be ignored. The Cold Start Doctrine, with its emphasis on rapid offensive operations, raises concerns about inadvertently crossing Pakistan's nuclear threshold. Pakistan, fearing a swift conventional defeat, might be tempted to use tactical nuclear weapons, particularly if it perceives an existential threat to its territorial integrity or national survival. India's Cold Start Doctrine has been met with a mixed reception on the international stage. While some countries view it as a legitimate response to the security challenges India faces, and its allies view it with suspicion. Perspectives reflects the complex geopolitical realities of South Asia and the broader Indo-Pacific region. Pakistan, unsurprisingly, has been the most vocal critic of Cold Start. Islamabad, stabilizing and provocative, arguing that it increases the risk of conflict and undermines strategic stability in South Asia. Pakistan has repeatedly raised concerns about Cold Start in international forums, accusing India of pursuing an aggressive military posture. The Cold Start Doctrine, whether or not it is ever implemented, has already had a significant impact on the strategic landscape of South Asia. The doctrine's unveiling signaled a shift in India's strategic thinking, away from a purely defensive posture towards a more assertive and offensive defense approach. This shift reflects India's growing economic and military might, its determination to play a more proactive role in regional affairs, and its willingness to use force if necessary to defend its interests. This assertive posture has inevitably altered the regional balance of power, raising concerns in Pakistan and leading to a reassessment of strategic calculations in Islamabad. India's Cold Start Doctrine, born out of the lessons of past conflicts and the evolving security dynamics of South Asia, represents a bold departure from India's traditional defensive posture. It signifies a more assertive and confident India willing to use its growing military might to protect its interests and deter aggression from its adversaries. The doctrine's emphasis on speed, surprise, and offensive maneuvers, particularly against Pakistan, reflects India's determination to seize the initiative and dictate the terms of engagement in any future conflict. However, the Cold Start Doctrine, despite its potential advantages, remains a subject of debate and uncertainty. Its effectiveness in a real-world scenario, particularly against a nuclear-armed adversary like Pakistan, is far from guaranteed. The doctrine's reliance on surprise, the vulnerability of its integrated battle groups to enemy countermeasures, and the ever-present risk of escalation to the nuclear level cast a long shadow over its feasibility.